So first of all, can I double check that you can hear me? Yes? Good. So we're in the session regarding the innovation. I'm Sue Thomas. I'm a retired librarian from Wales, and this is the technology session. We've got 4 very interesting presentations, and the information about the speakers is actually in the programme, so I'm not going to delay the presentations so that we've got time to actually listen to them. And we won't be taking questions actually at the end of each presentation, but we'll be taking the questions at the end of the session. So if you want to write down any of your questions, and we'll take those questions at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the first of our speakers, who is keenly at the microphone there. Make sure I've got this right. So I want to introduce Owen Coxall, who's from the UK and is going to talk about open access. So over to you, Owen.
Thank you. Just before I start, I understand this is being streamed, so some of my colleagues may be watching. So hi, I am here. I'm not on a city break in Dublin. I am working, so just get that out of the way first of all. So my name's Owen Coxall. I'm from the Bodleian Healthcare Libraries, which is part of the University of Oxford in the UK. So just to set the scene, when people hear Bodleian Libraries, quite often they think of things like the Radcliffe Camera, which is the nice old building there. We're not really one of those old historic buildings with nice books. We're a healthcare library, we're in hospitals, we're in university research buildings, so we're modern buildings, lots of computers, not many books. So, you know, we're not really one of the old, nice historic libraries, we're one of the new ones. So we basically provide a range of services to both the university and the NHS. We're a university service, but we have a service level agreement with the NHS, so we have a very wide range of users, and we do a lot of things with them as well. So we're supporting all their information needs, finding evidence, appraising it, and now we're moving into open access and publishing. So lots of new fields for us to work with as well. So if you're not familiar with open access in the UK, and in particular us in England, there's basically 2 parts to the open access. There's meeting funder requirements, so that's making research that's been funded by some external bodies available via open access. So that involves green open access, where it's free to access, free to publish, but there's a delay in it coming out. And also gold open access, where it's made available immediately, but there is a cost to the author. So we do a lot of work with our researchers explaining the differences there and supporting them with that. And then the second part are meeting the HEFCE requirements, so that's one of the funding bodies, Higher Education Funding Council in England, and their research excellence framework. So that's a process where they actually rate and rank university research outputs. And as part of that, there's an open access element there as well. And that's our Act on Acceptance campaign. The difference there is that it involves uploading author manuscripts to a repository. And that's based on the dates of acceptance, not the dates of publication. So we have a bit of clearing up to do there. So although I've said there's 2 parts to open access there, maybe I really should have said there's 4 parts, because also as well as that, we have our different approaches to dealing with it. So there's some technological approaches. So we have various systems, so Symplectic, which I'll explain a little bit more in a moment, and Aura, which is a research repository. So we have the technological side, and then a big chunk of what we're doing as well, which is basically marketing, so making people aware of what's going on, explaining the differences and supporting them. So lots of activities there. So we have something called Open Access Oxford, and this is basically a collaborative project working across the university, supporting our researchers, our academics in any department in their making sure that they can comply with any open access requirements. So it involves lots of different parts of the university. We've got research services, the libraries, IT and technical people. We have finance people, as well as our OUP, so our publishing arm, and then as well we have academic departments as well. So lots of different parts of the university all working together. And this is very deliberate. It's across the whole university. We need to work together to try and get it done. I appreciate it's not very evidence-based to have an unattributed quotation, which I've changed slightly as well, but never mind. But one of my colleagues did basically, in effect, say, our research departments are very big, they're scattered across the town, we have overseas departments as well, they're very independent, and they won't do what we tell them to do. So by having this cross-institutional organisation, they get the message from a number of different sources, so they take more notice. So I think if they just had one department telling them they need to do this, they probably wouldn't take any notice. But as it's coming from the libraries, from their finance people, from their admin people, they tend to take a bit more note there. So again, further subdivision within the open access team. We also have this OA project team, and that's made up of Aura, which is our institutional repository, Symplectic, which is our research information system, the APC team, so they deal with any open access publishing where there's a fee to be paid, and then we have our subject librarians who contribute to it as well, including an open access librarian. So we have one of our librarians whose role is basically open access. So she oversees all the activities we do and offers support, coordinates things as well. So as well as individual librarians in the subject areas, we do have someone overseeing the whole thing as well. So we have a fairly simple message in terms of the HEFKI requirements. The publishing requirements from the funders is pretty well established, and a lot of the questions we get about that are really quite technical ones about we've submitted this article to this journal and we have this many authors from different institutions, who pays? So that kind of thing we deal with on a one-to-one basis now, whereas our Act on Acceptance message for the next REF, which is going to be 2021, that's something that we're having to push out across the whole university. So we have something called Act on Acceptance. It's a very simple message for us to get across. So it's our promotional activity, and it's also includes our methods, our ways of collecting up this information. So a very simple message, a simple interface. They go to a website, and there's just one website to go to, a simple process to go through, and that's it. We've had one of our colleagues go and demonstrate the whole deposit procedure. She does it live in meetings. She asks someone in the audience to set a 2-minute countdown on their phone and deposits an article during that time. And I think that really helps because it's showing it live, showing busy people that you can do it. It's not a big hassle. So we're using symplectic elements. That's basically a way of collecting all this publication data as well. Very quick to use. It's useful because the information can be used for other things as well. So it's not just for us to measure compliance and to collect up this information. Departments can also use it to publish lists of their publications on their website as well. A lot of it's automated, so accounts are created automatically when people join the university, and there's plenty of help for them there as well. So again, maintained by a team across the university, this cross-institution collaboration again. So that's just a quick screenshot showing what it looks like. Basically, when they go to deposit their article, they're just presented with the screen like that, 4 fields to fill in, and that's it. If someone else has already submitted it, they don't even need to do that. They can just tick a box to add their name to it. So it's a very straightforward process. So what have we actually done in the libraries? So this stuff's going on. A lot of the technological stuff we have an input into, but it's not our responsibility. But there are things that we've been doing specifically. So one of the things we're doing is providing a lot of online help. We have a website that we contribute content to, but we also have a helpline. And that's means that any of our researchers, people with questions, can send their question into it and we'll reply, usually same day. And that's a mailing list made up of librarians and some people from the finance departments and the technical departments, so we can answer their questions quickly. So that's been quite successful. We've also done a lot of talking to people, which sounds really obvious, but it is something that's really important to do. We attend a lot of meetings and briefings, so we go and talk to people about what they should be doing. And also we've tried to have stands at events. So there's various events going on all the time. We have pop-up banners, flyers that we'll take, and we'll go and give those out as well. So as well as that, which is sort of aimed at large groups of people, we are working on a one-to-one basis with people as well. So we're supporting researchers as they get into grips with this, because it is a new way of doing things. I mean, it's been going for a couple of years now, but people are still quite new to the process, and we get new people coming in from overseas as well. So there's still a bit of work for us to do constantly, really, with new people coming in. We also did a lot of work on how we could make this as smooth as possible. So we were involved in trials of different methods of setting up the Act on Acceptance system as well. So we've been involved in that as well. And the subject librarians are basically going around spreading the word. So we're going and letting people know. So it's things like it's on our email signatures, and we always add it into any presentations we do as well. So what are our measures of success? I've got some sort of headline figures here for how the whole process has been going. We've done some measuring of how many articles have been submitted as well. But to be honest, we're not sure if it is a success or not. One of the problems we have is actually getting a handle on how many publications are coming out of our departments, because the Medical Sciences Division at the university produces a lot of research. So actually getting an accurate figure has been quite difficult. So we're still working on that. And then we're still working on what should our compliance rate be. However, one of the things that we've had to remember in the library is that compliance by the MSD departments is not our responsibility. They're responsible to comply. It's a requirement on them. We can encourage them. We can ask them to do it, but we can't tell them to do it. So that's been a bit of a challenge as well for us there. There is more pressure on them from other parts of the university, but it's not something that is our responsibility. So I think we need to sort of take that into account as well. If we're looking at compliance figures and they're not exactly what we would want, maybe we can give ourselves a bit of a break and say it's not exactly our fault. So what we can do, we can look at some other methods, other ways of measuring success, and what has been particularly useful for us. So one of the key things we've done has been building partnerships and working with other departments. We've made contact with people that we didn't really have a lot of contact with before. So we now have a very good contact within the Medical Science Division and their communications department, helped partly by the fact that the head of the communications, her husband's a librarian, so she's quite sympathetic to us. But also with some of the other research departments as well. So we've got people that didn't use the physical library space. They use the resources, they use the online journals, but they don't think of coming into the library. And now we have something that we can offer to them and talk to them about that they can't get help with elsewhere. So that's been really, really useful for us. And also we spent some time trying to find the right hook to go and talk to people. Some of our senior academics, our principal investigators, they're probably not that interested in the saving time aspect because they'll get someone else to do it for them, and to a certain extent may not be interested in the sort of money side of it because they have large research budgets and they're always bringing in new money. They are, however, interested in the reputation side of things. So if we talk to them about the damage to their reputation if they don't comply, they're a lot more interested. Whereas when we've gone and spoken to PAs, they're not as bothered about the reputation side, but we can really sell it to them by the simple fact that they can save time so they can do their other work. The email helpline that I mentioned earlier has also been extremely successful. we can answer inquiries quickly. People get a reply the same day. But also it's been really useful for us because we've got a sort of knowledge bank of questions that people are asking, and also other librarians and people within the university that we can run these past as well. So it's been really useful for us. We've got quite a big team of librarians in the healthcare libraries. We've got about 6 people, 6 librarians, 7 librarians, whereas some of our colleagues, there's only 1. So it's useful for them to have that peer support as well. It also keeps us all up to speed with what's happening, because we can all see the questions coming in, even if we're not answering them, but we can get a feel for the kind of questions that are coming in and also the answers. Our presentations at meetings have been extremely successful as long as they're ones that are organised by the department. I've been along to departments where there's been 50 senior investigators and I've presented about open access, and that's because it's been arranged by the department. If I arranged it, I don't think we'd get 2, 3, if we were lucky. So trying to get the links with the PAs, which we have done by saying we can save them time, they've then kept us in mind and added us into these meetings as well. So that's been really useful. Not everything has gone as smoothly or successfully as we would like. Some events have been very poorly attended to the point where we've had no one turn up. So that's a bit of a shame, you know, but it's a process we need to go through to see what works. And also we're finding that awareness is still low despite constant campaigns from us and other parts of the university. So we do still need to work on getting our message out as well. So we are looking at our next steps, and some of them have been really exciting. We're developing partnerships with different parts of the organisation as well. So we now have a partnership with a biomedical research centre based in Oxford, and this is a very large unit that's funded by National Institute for Health money, so it's in effect an NHS-funded organisation with university researchers. And they're using, or we're in the process of helping them set up Symplectic so they can use that for their own publication monitoring, even though they're not part of the HEFCE requirements. So that's been really useful for us, and it's actually led to them paying for some of our time as well. So as well as being an interesting project, it's led to us actually increasing our income, so very useful there. We're continuing to push our message, so we're looking at what we're saying to people, how we're saying it, reviewing what we're doing there, and trying to keep up to date because it is a constantly changing field as well. So, my final thoughts. I've been a professional librarian for about 10 or 11 years, and I've been to lots of conferences where people have said these messages. So it feels like a bit of a cliche saying them, but it's true. It really works. We have built relationships with the people that we're trying to help, and it's really helped us. It's led on to other things. We're trying to make sure we're targeting the right people with the right message, and it's made them more receptive, and we're not giving up. It's something that we have to keep doing. We keep trying, and we are seeing some success. So as I say, although it might seem a bit of a cliche, it's worth doing these things because they do actually work. So I think that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Well, I found that presentation absolutely fascinating. Just want to make sure people can still hear me. And we'll move very swiftly on to our colleague, MJ Tooey, who is joining us from the University of Maryland. So he's come a long way and is going to talk to us about something that I only had a presentation on at a conference in Wales fairly recently. So I'm really interested to find out more about makerspaces. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. I'm happy to be here, and as with my colleague Michelle Kraft this morning, I shall try to slow myself down. I tend to be a fast speaker. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about our library's adventure in advancing technology experimentation, creativity, and science. First, I have to clear up a couple of things. Yes, I am the MJ that Michelle referred to this morning. I don't know how many other MJs there are at this conference, but I'm the one she talked about this morning. And the second thing is, for those of you that are ultimately curious, it stands for Mary Joan. So that's what the MJ means. As with other talks that you've heard today, I do need to set the context and tell you a little bit about the University of Maryland, Baltimore. And I need to be very clear that I am at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. The University of Maryland, Baltimore is one of 13 universities within the University System of Maryland. We're not the University of Maryland College Park, so we're not near DC. We are actually up in downtown Baltimore, Maryland. Has anybody ever been to Baltimore other than the people that live there? Look at all my American friends here. Anyway, we're an institution that was established. We're the founding institution of the University System of Maryland, and we were established in 1807. Now, compared to some of you, that's not very old. In the United States, we are one of the oldest public medical institutions. We are in an urban setting on the west side of downtown Baltimore. Our colleagues at Johns Hopkins are on the east side of downtown Baltimore. And between the two of us, we are probably the largest employers in the city of Baltimore. So Baltimore, like many cities, older cities, urban locations, is of course faced with a number of challenges. And both our institutions certainly are working hard to face those challenges in our cities. And the healthcare industry is certainly something that elevates a lot of the things that go on in Baltimore. As I mentioned, we are a separate institution from the University of Maryland College Park. We have our own president. We have our own different schools. We have the schools that I have up on the screen there: medicine, nursing, dentistry, pharmacy, social work, law, and the graduate school. We also have the University of Maryland Medical Center, a large tertiary care hospital. We generate about $500 million a year in research funding, and we have about 6,500 students, and if you combine our faculty and our staff, about 7,000 people. So overall, about 13,000 people are around the university every day. So the UMB mission, again, is part of setting the context. We are a public institution. We take our mission very seriously. And our mission is to improve the human condition and serve the public good of Maryland and society at large through education, research, clinical care, and service. This is taken very seriously by our president, and we are all expected, and all the units that trickle down from the university, to also build our missions and our work around the mission of the university. So we are required to align with the UMB goals and their strategic themes up and down through the strategic plan. Now, it's pretty obvious in a health sciences library that it would be fairly easy for us to align with the research goals, no problem. The outreach goals, no problem. The education goals, no problem. However, our current president added into the strategic plan an innovation and entrepreneurship goal. And so it then became my responsibility as the executive director of the library to think, how do I fit into innovation and entrepreneurship? So let me tell you a little bit about the library before I answer that very exciting question. First of all, we were established in 1813, which makes us the founding library in the University System of Maryland. Again, compared to some of the institutions here in Europe, we're babies. But in the United States, we were probably in the top 5 health sciences libraries that were founded. We serve all the schools except law, and our mission is to meet the information needs of our diverse communities through provision of expertise, resources, services, and an environment supportive of the university's values and mission. We have long been known as technology and service innovators. So it became my challenge, as I said, to try to figure out how we fit into the innovation and entrepreneurship strategic plan. One of the things we do have in our library, which we're very fortunate about, is we do have a building that opened in 1998 that is about 180,000 gross square feet, 120 usable square feet. So we do have a large building, and as our collections and resources have compressed, we've had access to more space. We also share our building with tenants. So we have campus IT in the building. We have the university student accounting system, the bursar, the registrar, and in a strange little thing, the student counseling center. But that's a whole different story, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that later. So we are really seen as partners in the work of the university. As I mentioned, we work very well with the research enterprise, and number 44, poster number 44 by my colleague Alexa Mayo is about one of our innovative research projects, Research Connection. And I encourage you to go see that because that has some really interesting things in it. We're a large library not only in size but in staff. We have 57 staff. 27 of those are professional librarians, and the remaining 30 are support staff of one shape or type. So we are fortunate that we have a large staff. We are fortunate that we have a large building that we can use in a number of different ways. I think the important thing to point out, though, in this slide is in our mission, we talk about expertise, resources, services, and an environment supportive of the university's values and mission. As you've heard several times already today, there is no library that has all the money that they need for all the resources they would like to acquire. And it became readily apparent about 5 years ago that we were going to have flat or reduced resource budgets. So we started to strategically think about what could we do to position ourselves, and the way we do that is through expertise. So right now, although we have a flat budget for resources, we spend a lot of money building the expertise of our librarians because we think that's where we really shine. Whether we're embedded, whether we're working in the community, any of the projects that we do it with the thought that we're not bringing necessarily the resources to bear, but we bring the expertise to bear on either how to use those resources or how to do innovative programs. So let's move on. I have always been intrigued by the whole idea of technology and the use of technology. And again, as I've mentioned, I had to figure out how to fit into the innovation and entrepreneurship strategic goal. So I had to think about that ongoing support and alignment with the UMB mission. So I have an abiding interest in emerging technologies, whether it's 3D printing, virtual reality. And about 5 years ago, I started reading about replacement of body parts and things like that using the iterative printing process, 3D printing. And I needed to feel like we needed to be proactive, and it seemed to dovetail very nicely with the idea that we were going to be innovators and entrepreneurs, and how could we help the university be that way as well. So what we did was Bo-Yoon Kim, who is our Associate Director for Library Applications and Knowledge Systems, was tasked with putting together a group of people from within the library with some advisors from outside of the library on how we might develop a makerspace within the Health Sciences and Human Services Library. They spent about 6 months, maybe a little bit more, meeting with the maker community in Baltimore, talking to faculty who also had 3D printing in tiny little labs in corners somewhere. They did a lot of reading. And we realized that we could do some groundbreaking work in this area where we could actually do 3D printing and have an innovation space beyond 3D printing that was actually physically located in our library. We couldn't really manage a full-blown 3D makerspace. Makerspaces, are you familiar with the maker movement? The maker movement reminds me of like modern day arts and crafts movement where individuals and groups of people are gathering together to make things. I've been in makerspaces in museums. I've been into makerspaces in all types of different settings, and every one is different. Our makerspace was never going to be one of the ones with drill presses and saws and wood and metal and water and all that kind of stuff. But we could start to think about how we could develop a makerspace that would really support our students and our faculty in the work that needed to be done in a health sciences setting. So I met with some resistance. There was doubt from university administration whether we could pull this off. One of the stories I tell is that my own boss said, well, I'm not sure you should do 3D printing because what if the students print guns? And now in the United States, that's not such a funny question, I guess. But I said to him, I said, have you ever seen a 3D printer work? And he said, well, no. I said, I think we would know well in advance if a gun was being printed out or any pieces were being printed. It's slow. So onwards we went. We had a number of questions we needed to answer. And these are the questions. First of all, what was going to be the purpose of our 3D printing, of our now what we are calling our innovation space? Well, the purpose was that it was going to be a sandbox for experimentation, a playground for our students and our faculty to try this new type of technologies, no matter what they were. The second question was that where were we located? Well, in order to make it successful, we felt we needed to locate it in a highly visible place. So we located it on the main floor of the library, and I'll be sharing some pictures as we move further through the presentation. Where were we going to get the funding? Well, the university didn't supply it. I'm very fortunate that I have a donor who I can go to who is very interested in the intersection of education and technology and was able to fund at least the startup pieces of our makerspace. The contents. Well, initially, yes, we did have 3D printing because that was the big draw. Everybody wanted to see the 3D printers. But we also had a button maker, which was very practical. People would come in and make buttons for different meetings and different things like that. We had scanners. We had reading material. We subscribed to Maker magazine. And we had a workspace for people to work. One of the more difficult areas were the policies because we had to decide whether we were going to offer some of the services on a cost recovery basis, and we do. The 3D printing's on a cost recovery basis, so we had to cost that out. And the poster printing, which you'll hear about in a little bit too, is also on a cost recovery basis. We also needed to define who the users were. What was the user community that could actually come in and use the innovation space and the 3D printing? We determined that it would be really just our campus community. We didn't want people coming in and just from the public. And we are a public institution, so they are permitted to come into the library, but we really wanted to focus our space on our faculty and students. What kind of support would we offer? And this was also difficult because this meant that we needed to train and build expertise in the staff and in the faculty that were going to be supporting these new technologies. They're new to everybody. Not only were they new in the library, but they were new that we just had to learn about them in the first place. So we had people also from our information services group. We had Bo Yun, who is our associate director. We had a new and emerging technologies librarian that we hired to bring in to support the space where we took another position from somewhere else in the library and repurposed it. We also have a presentation practice studio in the library, which is a soundproof, high-level studio that the students and faculty use to practice presentations and to also practice just all manner of things, to videotape presentations, videotape things they need to do. So we wanted this space to complement that one. We had our grand opening in April of 2015, and by October 2015, the space was doubled. I'd love to be able to say that was because it was so popular, but that wasn't the reason. The reason was we decided to combine two service desks, and as one service desk vacated an area, the makerspace, the innovation space, expanded to double its size. But it is a popular space. This is the website for the iSpace, should you wish to visit it. It has all the information about everything we have in the innovation space. And so our area now is about, well, you'll see in the pictures. Over time, since 2015, in addition to adding the Emerging Technologies Librarian, we have also added classes and consultations. The poster printing plotter that Michelle mentioned this morning that Ryan Harris did is located in our innovation space. We've got a virtual reality station, Z-Space, a multimedia Mac, and one of the neatest things was our iSpace newsletter. So the iSpace newsletter is kind of interesting because it started out as, well, I better go over the equipment first because I promised I would talk to you about that. But I'll talk to you about the iSpace newsletter in a minute. The equipment we now have 3 3D printers. We have the multimedia Mac. We have 2 scanners, a laser scanner and a handheld 3D scanner. We have the Z-Space virtual reality workstation. We play around with Google Cardboard. We have the HB T1300, I can get my numbers right eventually, 1300 plotter, which is what we use to print posters on. We have the fun button maker, the 3-doodler printing pen, and if you've ever wanted to play with 3D printing and just use a pen to try to build something, this is a real test of your ability to do those kind of things. And we also have these really lovely DNA and molecule models that nobody touches. It's an interesting thing. We also offer classes and consultations. Some of the classes that we offer are Intro to 3D Printing, Intro to 3D Modeling, Intro to Data Analysis and Visualization with R, using GitHub to manage your scholarly work, create a data management plan with DMP Tool. We just introduced a brand new course, just as I was leaving actually on Friday, which is called From CT to .stl, create a printable 3D model from CT scan data. And so that's something that we added soon. We overlap a little bit in the library, and we're all friends there. We all work together with our bioinformationist and our research education and outreach program. And so those are two other strong programs that we have within the library. And so we've seen some collaboration and some overlap. And some of the courses they offer, for example, are Introduction to the Command Line for Managing Genomic Data, Data Management 101. So we see a little bit of that bleeding into other areas. So the iSpace News, back to telling you this story. The iSpace News was a way we were going to publicize, and we actually introduced it a year ago, was a way we were going to publicize what was going on in the iSpace. So we publish it, and basically it's a very simple format. It's a case study about somebody who's used the iSpace successfully. It has tips and tricks. It has some articles to be read and helpful hints, upcoming classes. And so some of the sample use cases, these are things that have actually occurred in our innovation space, are bread slicing human anatomy, 3D printing scaffolds for growing stem cells. These are actual products that people have come up with. Customized finger splints for people with trigger fingers and things. Customized lab equipment. Buttons for public health outreach. Support for ophthalmic imaging. And submersible environmental DNA samplers that can be submersed actually in water. What's interesting to me is, A, it's now more popular than our library newsletter, which is not only interesting but annoying, but it is also read by our university's entrepreneurship and licensing officer for patent ideas, which I think is very interesting. So let's take a look at it really quickly. So this is what you see from our main entrance. Our building is long and narrow. It's a city block long. So it's very difficult because we have this grand, I better not step back, I'm kind of like Michelle, a grand central staircase that divides the library in half. So it's hard to have a good sight line from the front door. Ours is off to the right, so the grand staircase is kind of next to that case that you see on the left-hand side. We tried to reuse furniture as much as we could, so some of those pieces are from some of our old reference desks and things. And we tried to make it look industrial by using the desks, making industrial panels made out of kind of a perforated looking plastic metal. We have pegboards with shelving, chalk paint on the back wall so we can write on it, and a very, very prominent sign. It's an open footprint. We decided not to enclose the innovation space because we would have had to get permission to do that because of the off-gassing of the filament. So there's the very expensive sign. Sometimes the simplest things take the longest to do. And so there was a lot of discussion on what should be on our innovation space, fine plastic sign there with all the symbols. And it took longer than many of the things we do. There's Brian Zellup, our emerging and new technologies and emerging technologies librarian. Working in this space, you can see the workbenches, you can see the wall where we write on the chalk paint. You can see a lot of the things like the DNA statue in the back there that nobody wants to take apart for fear of wrecking the universe, I guess. We have run into issues. This space does generate noise at certain times, and it's on the main floor of our library, which is a relatively loud floor anyway, but people still are studying. So as time goes on, we're really going to have to make a decision as to whether we want to be a very busy transactional space in there, or whether we want to find a way to kind of divide the space so that there can be quiet study and our innovation space. Again, there's one of the chalkboard things. We have this great monitor that's a very big eye catcher as you're walking past it. It tells you what's going on in the innovation space and what the next things. You can see some of the industrial cabinets. We have a very talented staff member who has drawn that beautiful skull and that microscope on the chalkboard. We also use one of the walls to announce the classes. So these are the things that are going on. You can see I took this somewhere prior to May 11th. And this is just some of the cool paraphernalia that we put on display. I thought we might be in a smaller room, but if you've never seen 3D printing, I have my 3D printed origami rabbit and an actual mandible that was developed by one of our folks using open source data. It's really interesting to look at. You can see filament in this picture. You can see the DNA model. If you look in the background, you can see the plotter, which is you know, and certainly the magazines, the brochures, everything we have. The workhorse 3D printer, which is our LulzBot. And finally, quickly, we'll go through just a quick impact of the innovation space. It has been very useful. From a clinical perspective and research perspective, we've built prosthetic hands and noses, mandibles, orbital bones, lab equipment, lung cancer modeling using the CT scanning, equipment repair. The students and everybody built holiday ornaments and gifts this past year. It's been incorporated into physical therapy assignments, included in grant proposals, and we were identified, the library was identified as an entrepreneurial and innovative service by the President's Fellows. So I think we have fit into the strategic mission of the university. And finally, when they were looking at the facilities master plan for the university, we were named as one of the only places at UMB where new technologies can be tried and tested and are available to everyone. So we have been thinking that this has been a big success for us. In the future, we'll be collaborating with other universities because we don't have a computer science department at the university, so we need to work with people to kind of advance our skills. We've already done some outreach to the public schools to demonstrate 3D printing, the Baltimore Maker community, and one of my favorite things is the Meet Your Maker series that we're going to have in the fall, where people are going to actually meet our 3D experts. Some hackathons and a maker fair coming up in the fall. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm looking forward to any questions that you have at the end. I would say, having heard Aoife speak this morning about vision and having Michelle talk about alignment, I would say, you know, just be a really good planner, keep those ideas in mind, and you might be able to do this yourself. So thank you very much.
Well, I thought that was an excellent presentation, and I hadn't noticed the rabbit, and I think we should have a competition so that we can name the ICML rabbit. So think of some ideas, colleagues, as we listen to the.
You want to name the mandible too?
We can name the mandible. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Time is pressing, and we need to move on to our next presentation, and this is from our colleague Elisabetta Poltronieri, and apologies for the pronunciation. So Elisabetta has come from Italy and is going to be talking to us about open data. So a slightly different take, so welcome.
Thank you, Sue. I'm from the Italian National Institute of Health in Rome. Let me say good afternoon to you all. And in this presentation, I will be talking about habits, daily practices, and expectations of scientists, those committed to handling research data. Yes, this research data who seem to be the rising stars in the open science landscape. Research data, it's something that, if I may say so, scholars are called to deal closely with if they really want to spread their scientific output. As you are surely aware of, for all projects funded under the program H2020, the European Commission requires open access as a default setting for scientific publication. Besides that, within the open research data pilot, the Commission is taking into account, on one hand, the balance between openness and protection of scientific information when needed, so that participating projects in this pilot, projects, which generate data, are required to develop a data management plan in which scholars are called to specify which data will be open. More in detail, the Commission recommends to be compliant with the well-known suite of FAIR principles: findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. These magic 4 words to make data really reusable and reproducible for the progress of science. Keeping this general context in mind, let's now have a look together to what is happening in Italy, what we are trying to do as a group of experts to promote the best practice recommended by the European Commission about handling research data. Last year, in June, we set up a BISA working group, spelled in Italian, BISA, where this acronym stands for Bibliosan for Open Science. So we are a cross-institutional working group coordinated by the Italian National Institute of Health, which I belong to. Bibliosan, as probably most of you are aware of, is the network grouping all the biomedical research libraries in our network, in our country. From the very beginning, last year, BISA was committed to fulfilling 2 main goals. First, that of creating a survey intended to explore practices and habits and attitudes about managing research data within our research communities. And secondly, that of outlining a sort of draft policy which is intended to regulate the procedures on how properly managing data. I think it's worth mentioning this document that is a report from we got inspiration, and that is based on a survey that was carried out in 2015. We practically translated this questionnaire into Italian, and then we adapted it to the Italian research contest in the biomedical field. So let me now go just a bit in deep and offering you some results of our survey. We uploaded our questionnaire or 26 questions on Google Forms online. We sent it early this year to the 60 institutions belonging to the Bibliosan network, and we are quite satisfied in receiving 2,433 responses, compared with a target population of about 15,000 scientists. Let me move now to show some particular data. As far as the coverage of people surveyed, the profession which was covered as prevalent was that of biologists. The majority were women, aged between 30 and 50. Let's focus now on devices used for saving data. The majority of respondents, as you can see, declare they save data on their own computer. As you may notice, the variety of responses reveal that really there are no set procedures for a given institutional centralized ad hoc device. People who responded said locally, on my own computer. And there are risks, of course, in doing that, because there is no guarantee that my computer will work without any problems. So there should be something stronger that can save data. So we were a bit astonished to obtain this result. We then wanted to assess the need for storage space in the event that data center infrastructures are implemented. The average size per year was between 50 and 100 gigabytes, as declared by the most of respondents. As far as storing data, the researcher himself appears to be the main responsible. And the fact that the storage of data is taken only by researchers themselves implies that they should operate according to uniform standards in order to make data reusable, reproducible for follow-up projects. So the provision of proper training for data experts is really important. And now let's face the delicate problem of data loss. In this regard, we wanted to find out to what degree researchers have already experienced with research data loss, given the high cost associated with the generation of research data. Luckily, only 20% of respondents declare they lost their data. And now we are going to observe the reasons. The range of reasons for data loss include mainly the accidental deletion, together with hard disk failure, both accounting to over 50% of causes revealed. This makes it evident that a sustainable backup of research data represents a rather important issue. You can notice that the option other in the second bar has gained a quite relevant number of responses, but please don't pay attention to that, because we'll find out later that people were confused in answering this question, so they put some free text phrases that had nothing to do with the issue of losing data. So please consider just the first and the third bars as significant results. And now, let's shift to the usage of so-called external data. We were precise in defining what we meant. External data are those that are not generated by the researcher himself. The majority of respondents said, no, we do not use external data. We can have a look at what this no means. It might mean that no data are available at all. The data are available but cannot be used. That people don't know if there are any available data, or they don't feel safe to cite them properly because they are afraid of losing or infringing copyright rules. Among those who responded that benefit from external data, the 48% of the slide before, luckily there was a very low percentage who faced legal problems, 0.6. In any case, we are sure that there should be a legally trained information staff at the institutions for researchers to rely on. Here we aimed at knowing whether data become traceable once a research leaves its own institution. We were satisfied to find out that data are not transferred, as they remain as the institution for the majority of cases when switching institution. But honestly, we were a bit worried about the answer some gave by saying, I don't know. Because this means that who answered probably never wondered about this issue, or probably never left the institution, or other possibility, is not part of the regular staff of this institution. And now let's consider the delicate issue of sensitive data, confidential sensitive data. Almost the whole of respondents sometimes declare they handle or generate sensitive data. Let's consider that this affects accessibility, sharing, and reuse of data, and researchers should be able to rely on guidelines, on policies from legally educated personnel, or from the support of a supervisor to avoid, of course, legal consequences. Now let's identify which audience should be given access to research data. 3/4 of respondents indicated they grant access only to interested persons upon request, or to people affiliated with their own institution. So it seemed to us that a sort of selected access is granted just in these two particular cases. Let's see now where data are made available. The most frequently selected options, email and pen drive, lead us to think that researchers rely once again on personal and non-institutional devices to circulate their data. In fact, data repositories or cloud applications considered as very certified platform to deposit data are used in a small percentage or are still less common. About reusability, that was prevalent compared with the option of not allowing any reuse, even if by just 3 percentage points more. As we know, reusability goes far beyond accessibility because it means that it's clearly defined in advance whether and how data will be able to be used and processed. Let's see the most significant obstacles to the sharing of research data. One, the fear of misuse and misinterpretation, the fear of privacy violation, the risk of commercial exploitation by third parties. We decide to know by this question the motivation for sharing data. The most attractive incentives for the respondents basically included recognition of data as valuable material for research and progress of science, and practice of sharing conceived as a way of facilitating contacts between producer and users of data. So, what institutional measures can be taken and what are expected from our institution to improve the practice of handling correctly data? Technical infrastructures and provision of properly training courses. Again, other concrete action expected from the population surveyed through the BISA questionnaire were, first, the need to have trained qualified staff, ad hoc professionals for managing research data. And as a second point, the definition of guidelines or policies for dealing with research data. As a final point, we would like to show you our planner book for the upcoming months. So we are trying to draft a policy to circulate among our research communities in order to receive quick feedback, and we will produce an advanced version of the policy, and we would like to submit it to our ministry for final approbation. And as a final point, we would like not to hear anymore this comment that was reported in the free text in our survey. Managing research data usually means ignoring the issue instead of dealing with it. So it was a bit discouraging, and I think we have to do our best to promote, as Mr. Sinclair said this morning, we have to be embedded librarians as conceived as driving forces to really foster the progress of science. So thank you for your kind attention.
I've got one more presentation and then there'll be time for some questions. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our last presenter, Anna Noel-Storr from Oxford, who is going to talk to us about Cochrane Crowd and using citizen science. So
thank you. Thanks very much. So hello. It's great to be here. I'm going to talk about a really exciting initiative called Cochrane Crowd. I'm an information specialist by training, spending half my time as the information specialist for the Cochrane Dementia and Cognitive Improvement Group. But for the last year and a half, I've also been performing another role where I co-lead the Cochrane Crowd initiative. And so it's really in this capacity that I'm here to talk to you today. So information, as we all know, is being produced at an ever-increasing rate. Global scientific output is doubling every 9 years. We're drowning in the data and information, much of which is of dubious quality. Within Cochrane, the organization that I work for, we produce over 500 systematic reviews every year. And producing high-quality systematic reviews is no mean feat. The effort expended on each and every review is great, and we're under constant pressure to produce high-quality synthesized evidence as quickly as possible. I'm always doing back-of-the-envelope calculations, and one that I did recently was about trying to estimate how many citations are screened annually in the effort to identify the studies for inclusion within Cochrane reviews. So if we say that Cochrane produces around 500 new reviews per year, and that for each of those reviews we retrieve perhaps around 2,000 search results identified. Obviously, I appreciate that the number of search results varies dramatically, and I think that's a pretty conservative number, but I'm going with easy maths here. That would equal 1 million citations to screen. And if you factor in that citations should be dual screened, that's actually 2 million. And that's obviously a high number. In fact, it's more than the number of citations added to PubMed in a year. But what really struck me is when you factor in that on average, each Cochrane review contains only around 11 included studies. That's 2 million citations screened for only 10,500 included studies. And that's a painfully bad noise-to-signal ratio. In addition to this challenge of information overload, in Cochrane we've struggled to provide potential contributors with meaningful ways to get involved. In the past, the main way to get involved was as an author of a Cochrane review with all that that entails. So hold on a minute. On the one hand, we have people wanting to help, and on the other, we have too much information to keep up. Perhaps there's a solution here, one that makes better use of both people and technology. And indeed, that's what I want to talk about today. Cochrane Crowd is helping us meet the challenge of information overload by providing a new model of contribution that enables anyone with an interest in health to contribute to identifying the evidence. So how does it work? Well, it's an online platform that hosts small, discrete tasks, which I'll refer to as micro-tasks. And the key thing about these tasks themselves is that A, they're needed, and B, they're doable. Cochrane reviews are complex pieces of work made up of a number of different processes and steps, and within each there are discrete, often quite repetitive tasks. And it's these small tasks that I think potentially lend themselves very well to a micro-tasking approach. So here's a screenshot of the main task we have available on Cochrane Crowd. The aim of the task is to identify reports of randomized or quasi-randomized trials from large numbers of search results retrieved from very sensitive searches run in biomedical databases each month. This is a needed task. Almost all our reviews rely on randomized evidence. So, if we can prospectively identify as many reports of RCTs as possible and feed them into Cochrane's central register of controlled trials, we'll save time further down the line when we want to produce a systematic review assessing a treatment's effectiveness. And so what you can see here is a title and an abstract, and then 3 decision buttons over on the side. And the contributor has to make a choice as to whether or not they think this title and abstract is describing a randomized trial or not. So Cochrane Crowd builds on the highly successful former project called the MBASE project. The MBASE project ran from 2013 to 2016, and then we launched Cochrane Crowd in May 2016. The MBASE project had a very defined focus. It was about identifying reports of randomized trials from MBASE. With Cochrane Crowd, we're scaling this approach by developing more microtasks. We currently offer the RCT identification task I've just shown you, and we also offer a diagnostic test accuracy identification task. But we're close to rolling out a PICO task where our citizen scientists will help describe the evidence in a consistent way using a PICO ontology Cochrane has developed. We're also working on building various progression pathways. Some tasks are just trickier than others, and we'd like to make it possible for contributors to progress to new tasks should they wish to do so. So, Cochrane Crowd recently turned 1, and we celebrated the anniversary in style with a week of various events and challenges. It was a great way to mark what has been a thrilling journey so far. And I now just want to take you through some of the highlights and results achieved. I'm going to start off with what I refer to as the headline metrics. So we now stand at over 1.2 million individual classifications having been made by contributors. This equates to over 400,000 citations having been collectively screened, and over 33,000 reports of randomized and quasi-randomized trials have been identified for Cochrane's central register of controlled trials. And as of yesterday, 5,894 people have signed up to take part. Those contributors come from around 120 countries. So those are some very high-level results, and we're obviously really delighted with them. What I want to do now is take a slightly deeper look at our data in terms of who our contributors are, why they contribute, what they contribute, and how good are they at it. So at Sign Up, we deliberately don't ask too many questions. We wanted to make signing up as quick and easy as possible. Instead, we fairly regularly put out surveys to find out a little bit more about our contributors. And towards the end of last year, we put out just such a survey for new contributors, so those who had signed up since we launched the new platform. And this survey indicated that most of our new contributors are aged between 26 and 35. 59% work in a health-related field. Around 1/5 of new sign-ups are students, and 16% describes themselves primarily as consumers. Another source of information for us is, of course, platform use. So, for example, how many are signing up, but they're not actually doing anything? Or at least not yet. Let's hope that they will at some stage. Well, our latest figures indicate that of the 3,530 people who've signed up in the last 12 months, almost 60% have completed the mandatory online training. I think that indicates good agreement, good engagement, in fact. The training is brief, but it will act as a barrier for some. So staying with our assessment of contributor activity, here we can see just how much people are doing. We can see in the top row that around 3/4 of contributors have done somewhere between 1 and 99 assessments or classifications. What's encouraging to see is the 3 rows in the middle, which equate to around 700 people who have done between 100 and up to, 10,000 classifications. These contributors make a significant amount of difference to the overall efficiency of this system, because the more you do, the better you become, and the faster you get. And then, of course, we have a clutch of truly dedicated contributors who have screened more than 10,000 classifications. And indeed, our top screener has done almost 80,000. So that begs the question, why? In terms of why are people signing up to Cochrane Crowd, motivations fall into 2 broad categories. The first one is that people want to help. They want to help Cochrane, and they want to help the field of evidence-based medicine more broadly. The second reason is to learn. People feel that through contributing to these kinds of activities, they're also learning. And I just want to briefly mention a feature that we rolled out with the new platform, which is proving very popular in Crowd, and it's the ability to work on records in areas of interest to you. So I work for the dementia group, and I tend to prioritize working on records that are about dementia and Alzheimer's. And so far, over 300 people have used this feature, adding over 500 unique topic terms. So we've looked at some headline results, and we've taken a deeper look at who is signing up to Cochrane Crowd and why, but I want to focus a little bit on performance. And by this, I mean contributor accuracy and the quality of the data that comes out of Cochrane Crowd. How do you ensure quality? That is probably the most asked question I get, and understandably so. Because if you're going to go to these efforts of mobilizing a crowd to conduct important and needed tasks, you need to be able to assess the output. So there are 2 key aspects to this. And the first is around providing adequate training, and the second is about the use of a suitable agreement algorithm. And I've already talked a little bit about the training, but it's probably worth recapping that for each task on Cochrane Crowd, we provide brief but mandatory training made up of around 20 interactive practice records that guide a contributor what we're looking for that particular task and what should be rejected. And just a very quick example, because I know we are running out of time. So the training is obviously very important, as are other feedback mechanisms that we have in place within Crowd. And these things help with individual contributor accuracy. However, what we're really interested in from a data quality point of view is the collective accuracy. So this is where the agreement algorithm comes into play. And on the screen now is a slightly simplified version of the randomized controlled trial identification agreement algorithm. And in brief, it requires 4 consecutive agreement decisions on a record for that record to go to one of 2 places, either central or the digital bin. And any breaks in that consecutive chain, and the record goes to a resolver-level crowd screener. So with the training and the algorithm in place, how is collective accuracy actually doing? We've run a number of evaluations, and the latest one was run on a batch of around 6,000 records. It was a natural sample, which means by that I simply took a whole month's worth of records that needed screening and sent them to the crowd and to a reference standard to act as a comparator. Both the crowd and the reference standard were given the same training, and the results were very good. Crowd sensitivity, so that's the crowd's collective ability to correctly identify the records that should go into central, and crowd specificity, the crowd's collective ability to identify the records that should be rejected, came out at about 99%. I do want to talk very briefly, I promise, about other tasks we're beginning to roll out in Cochrane Crowd, because I've focused much of my talk so far on the randomized controlled trial task, which is live, It's available to all who sign up, and over the next few weeks and months will be expanded to include trial registry records from clinicaltrials.gov. But we do also have a diagnostic test accuracy identification task. This becomes available to a contributor when they've done 200 classifications on the RCT task. And we're in the process of evaluating how well this task is going in terms of collective accuracy. We're also very close to rolling out a PICO task, and that marks a bit of a departure from the identification tasks. If we just take a very quick look at our early DTA results. So the first batch of records we got the crowd to screen for the DTA task was a completely known batch. That means that we knew the answers already, and we wanted to see how well our training stood up, whether or not the agreement algorithm we put in place was effective. DTAs are a lot more challenging than randomized controlled trials. They can take many forms in terms of study design. So how did the crowd get on? Well, in terms of classifications, the results are very encouraging and reflected very similar proportions to the RCT task, in that only around 7% of records need resolving. So this is important as it gives an indication of system efficiency. However, collective accuracy was a slightly different story. So here you can see the 2x2 table for that batch of records. And within that batch, we had randomly selected 121 known diagnostic test accuracy studies that were included studies in Cochrane reviews. And we can see here that the crowd's collective accuracy in terms of sensitivity was quite a bit lower than on the RCT task, coming in at about 83%. So now we have to work to try and understand why that is and what we can do to improve it. Was it perhaps that those missed 20 records were all from a similar domain area? Were they all diagnostic tests of a certain type, such as biomarker tests? One trend that we have identified is that over 75% of those missed studies were very old studies. They predated STARD, the reporting standard for diagnostic studies. So there's potentially an issue around reporting standards or lack thereof. Just wanted to show you a screenshot of our PICO task that's going to be rolled out soon. So in this task, the contributor will be taken through a series of questions about the trial with the aim of surfacing the main PICO elements in a consistent way. And as well as developing new tasks, we're also developing new workflows. To date, the crowd have helped identify thousands of reports of trials for Central. We know that, and that's brilliant, and we want that to continue. Our vision, and maybe it is a pipe dream, but we're holding firm to it for now, our vision is that one day we may have such a comprehensive and up-to-date repository, it may no longer be necessary to perform the complex multi-source searching we all do for each and every review. However, as we work towards this vision, we want to be able to directly help Cochrane review teams today. So we're developing a crowd as a service option. This is where a review team can request help from Cochrane Crowd to identify potentially relevant evidence. And we've done 4 pilots so far, and I'm just going to very briefly mention a couple of the results. So across the top there, N, you can see that's the number of citations for each of those 4 reviews that needed screening. Below it, you can see the number of randomized trials identified by the crowd. You can see how many of the crowd took part, and you can see, which I think is the important one, how long it took to complete that screening task. And we can see that for one of them, it took a matter of hours. We've also just done the very simple calculation of working out the reduction in the number of records that needed to then be worked on by the author team, and we can see that the range is from 58% to 83% reduction. So there's always so much to say when it comes to Cochrane Crowd. I'm going to say one more thing, and that is about another tool that we're developing as an add-on to Cochrane Crowd, which is called Classmates. So throughout the Embase project and throughout Crowd, we've always been asked by teachers and educators, can we use Crowd for our students? And we've always said yes, and we've always tried to support those activities. But now we've built a toolkit, which we're about to road test with around 25 trainers, that is designed specifically to help enable trainers and educators to use the Crowd tasks for their students. And so with that, I'm going to bring this talk to an end. There's always so much to say, but we are running out of time. So Cochrane Crowd is helping us meet the very real challenge of information overload. It provides potential contributors with meaningful ways to get involved, and anyone can contribute and make a difference. I don't refer to Cochrane Crowd as a project anymore. It's an important and established part of Cochrane's ecosystem. It represents a shift in the way we manage information within the organization, moving us away from our siloed approach to identifying evidence to an upstream model that makes the best use of our greatest asset, people. And this is critical if we're going to stand a chance in keeping up. So I just want to thank the fantastic Cochrane Crowd team that I work with, but mainly I want to thank all of our wonderful contributors. Thanks very much.
Well, despite our contributors saying they were not running to time, bearing in mind that we had to be virtually beamed up from one session to the next, so we've actually kept very well to time. And there is some time now before we all get ourselves organised for the welcome reception for any questions to our speakers. Now, I'm not sure, looking in the direction here, I don't think there's a roving mic, so I think we're just going to have to shout, or perhaps you want to come up. So if you want to start, gentleman there.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, lady even.
Thank you. I don't know how to get this working. Oh, there we go. Got it. I'm so glad you asked that question. I was hoping somebody would, because I just couldn't fit it into the presentation. It was already too long. And then I sent my slides off and almost asked for them back so I could put stuff in. We work very closely with another project that comes under the main umbrella project for Cochrane Crowd called the Evidence Pipeline. And that project is all about using machine learning and text mining to help us perform some of these tasks. What's been fantastic with Cochrane Crowd is not only have we been identifying reports of randomized trials for Central, we've been creating one of the largest human-generated gold standard data sets that we've then been able to train the machine to do the job. And that's exactly what we've done. So we've now built, or my colleague James Thomas has now built the RCT classifier, which you run your citations through the classifier and it gives each citation a likelihood as to whether or not it's describing a randomized trial. And what we've now got in our workflow, and we're confident with the results, is that anything that the machine assigns as a 10% or less likelihood to be reporting a randomized trial, we're really confident is a reject record, and we don't send that to the crowd anymore. It's time that we make better use of the machine and the human together, and so that, on average, gets rid of about 60% of records that we used to put through the crowd. And the rest, for now, we do put through the crowd still, but as we build up this data set, the machine will just get better and better. And also as reporting standards improve as well, that always helps. But that's a great question, and we'll talk a bit more about it in our workshop on Friday, just to put a plug in for that.
There's a lady there.
Oh, and we've got a poster, I'm being told, to promote that. That's the back pink.
Far away. I'm sorry there's no the mic, but if you want to come up here and say your question, you're more than welcome.
Okay. Fascinating talk, and thank you so much, Emma. I actually have several questions for you for Cochrane. First of all, will Cochrane be keeping all this database that you just told us, like the Cochrane classroom, classmates, and the PICO, and the crowd? Will that be free for us for at least several years, or not become a commercial database?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. Obviously, it's reasonably complex, and I'm not, party to all of those discussions. But absolutely, the policy is that any metadata that the crowd produces is free and open access. And if you want access to it and you want to, for example, use it to build your own classifiers, to do your own machine learning data sets, to test out our algorithms, anything like that, just contact us and we can get you the data set. Classmate will be free in terms of being able to access the Cochrane Crowd microtask for your students. Yeah, that is another area that we've agreed on as well. And again, with the PICO, well, it falls under the same category of the microtasks. If the crowd are producing the metadata, that metadata will be open.
Perfect. And then you also addressed about the contributor. How do you, what are the qualifications? How do you screen?
Yeah, I do get asked that a lot. And when we first started the project, and we started with the Embase project previously, we kept kind of low-key about it in terms of promoting and recruiting contributors. And so we attracted a very evidence-savvy crowd initially. And so we didn't really have any concerns about feeling the need to vet people. And as we launched Cochrane Crowd and we've broadened and we welcome a broader contributor base, that is exactly what we want to do, we're still pretty relaxed about who we might be getting. And we still deliberately don't ask whether or not people think they know what a randomized trial is before they start the task. They do have to do the mandatory training, but we haven't set a pass mark for it. You can fail it and still go on and screen live records, and we're comfortable about that because we have a robust agreement algorithm. And we just have to keep on monitoring what's happening. I think it's really important that while we also have a robust agreement algorithm, though, we go to as many efforts as we can to help people learn as they do this task, so that we're not just abandoning them and saying, well, it doesn't matter, our algorithm can cope with these people constantly making mistakes. Actually, what I really want to be able to do is to enable as many automated feedback mechanisms as possible that help people recognize where they might have gone wrong if they're making some sort of systematic error.
Just can you, let's see, anybody else got any other questions? I've got one as chair, but you go first and I'll ask mine afterwards.
Another very important question. Does Cochrane have all these new products, right? And librarians, we're not aware of it. So what kind of education Cochrane is going to distribute to teach the librarians? I only learn about it.
When you come to conferences and stuff.
Well, not everybody can have time.
Yeah. Yeah. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is an extremely good point, and I really I take that on board, and absolutely I'll take it back to Cochrane. I know. I mean, yeah.
Well, we can read. Does anybody else have any other burning questions? I've got one as chair, which I'm interested in our colleague MJ there. I was really interested from my work perspective. You mentioned these buttons for public health outreach.
Oh.
I wondered if you could, I got an idea in my head as to what they might be, but I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about those.
Sure. The question had to do with the buttons for public health outreach. Well, the button maker is very popular and it's free. And we have activist students. And so they came and asked if we would mind if they, for some event they were doing, raise awareness about public health, that if they could print out buttons, and so they did for everybody that was in their group that promoted public health, and we got a lot of good publicity for letting them do it, and we've had other groups come to us, a little bit off topic, but come to us for poster printing for the March on Science. They came to us and asked if we would subsidize their posters for the March on Science. So we're trying to, student activists and citizen scientists and things like that, we're trying to keep them as part of our community and help them out because they don't have any money. So that was what it was about.
That's fascinating, really interesting. If you want to ask your question, then please fire away. Involve everybody in this. Yeah, feel free, feel free.
Help me out. UC has the publication management.
The University of California.
Yeah, University of California has a publication management system that we've been trying to encourage our faculty to deposit their articles.
That uses symplectic.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
So my question to you is, your form is very, very simple, basic, but our form is a little bit more complex. Yeah, and we try so hard to, well, we actually offer to help the faculty deposit the data. My question to you is, the form that you, because I couldn't see too well when you have it on there, how do you handle the copyright? Because, different journals have different copyright, what version you can deposit in there. So how do you deal with that?
Well, we're really lucky in that we actually have a team working at the repository that check copyright. So we actually have some dedicated staff that will look at whether things can be put under embargo, whether they are available, whether they comply. So I think, as I was saying, it's cross-institutional. It's we've had an institutional repository for quite a while, and I don't think anyone would make a secret that uptake wasn't amazing to start with, but because it's now pretty much mandatory, people are engaged with it, and also there's more impetus on us to make it as easy as possible. So I think it's kind of a combination of things. So the fact that for things to be eligible in the next ref, they have to do it, so we're supporting them, and then we can offer support on things like checking copyright.
Well, I think our challenge is, when there's embargo and when, you only can do the post-print or reprint, whatever, trying to get the faculty to give you that version is inconsistent. Yeah, unless you use the publisher version and, copy and paste and do it like similar to it, and that's not possible for time-wise. It's not feasible, I should say. Yeah, so how do you resolve that when you cannot use the publisher version and you cannot get your faculty to give you the work or whatever final version that they submit to the publishers?
Well, the big difference for us is that the HEF key policy for the next ref means they have to deposit their author-accepted manuscript. So for it to be eligible in the next ref, which is where they're going to be assessed, they have to. So if they don't deposit it, they can't include it. So it's an external pressure. So it's not coming from us in the university, it's not coming from us in the library, it's from a national body.
It's from the Wellcome Trust, yeah.
Similar thing. So it's made our job easier because someone else is making it mandatory rather than us really trying to encourage them. If they don't deposit it, they can't include it. So it's kind of made our job easier. So it's a different situation to yours.
It looks as though your advocacy and your pushing has to be at higher level, not with your actual.
I'd like to ask something to Owen too. I was wondering about your repository, if it has been tailored also to host data, or like supplementary materials or things that usually people would have who have no repositories deposit, for example, in Zenodo or other data repositories?
Yeah, we also have another project called Aura Data, which is looking at collecting, it's an institutional repository for data as well. That's at a earlier stage in planning and execution, and also we don't have the same mandatory requirements via HEFKI. So that's at an earlier stage, but we are, do have that in process, a work in progress.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think we've done that session extremely proud, and I'd like to take this opportunity, thanking all the contributors. I've learned a huge amount in this session, which is fantastic. And having only come across the sort of makerspaces stuff in a few weeks ago and this and that, I think it's been really valuable, and I'm sure colleagues would also agree. I know a few people have had to leave because they've got other commitments. So if we take this opportunity to thank our speakers again. Thank you very much.